Hey, everybody. I'm Vince,
And I'm Emily.
and you're listening to The Lighthouse Lowdown. Welcome back to the show.
Woo, woo, woo.
Today,
we're sitting next to each other, so it's very strange.
I know, so close. Usually we're 2 feet across from each other. Now we're 1 foot next to each other.
We're doing a fun interview today, so we had to sit next to each other for a camera.
We're next to each other, and we're in your ears.
Yeah.
Welcome.
It's a double whammy.
So today is kind of a different episode. I would ask you, if you haven't, to go back and watch, I don't know which episode, on
20th.
East Brother Light Station.
20th episode.
Which was Emily's.
Yeah.
And today I kind of helped to put together only because I monitor our YouTube. We had a super nice lady named Desiree Heveroh reach out to us on our YouTube for that episode about East Brother Light Station. And she shared with us that she was actually one of the keepers there and helped to care for the light station through COVID, through a massive 2-month power outage, and through a bunch of really interesting stories.
Yeah.
So today we're going to just jump right into the interview. We didn't record this intro with her, so we'll jump into that recording now. Thank you for listening.
Hi guys.
Hi.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm glad you could join us.
I'm doing all right, and I'm glad I could join you too.
This is always a little interesting to get started when we're recording and also doing video, but the video is not recording. So it's just us to hang out, and we've got Bo Cat here with us too.
I was going to say, who's that handsome baby?
This is Bo. He likes to hang out while we do our podcast because if he's not on my lap, then he's meowing. So he's like in the back of our audio.
Yeah.
Hi, Bo.
Yeah, he's not wired in, but
Doesn't have a little headset.
first off, how did you find our episode on East Brother Light Station?
I mean, anything that has to do with East Brother Light Station, I seek out, but then I also have Google alerts and,
Oh, cool.
just keeping tabs on my girl.
That's awesome. So tell us about your experience there. So starting from, you're on the board, is that correct, of East Brother Light?
Well, I mean, it goes back further than that. The first time I saw the light station, I was crossing the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, going from San Rafael back into Richmond. My daughter was in the car with me, and she said, "What's that house out there on the water?" And I looked, and I was like, "I don't know." And then for some reason, it just kept, like an earwig in my brain. And so I looked up. This was a while ago, and the internet wasn't quite as fast or good as it is now. So I'm like typing, house on island near San Rafael Bridge, and then I stumbled across what it was, and the bed and breakfast, and you couldn't take kids out there, so I thought, well, that's that. As a young mom, what I could afford would be trips for my daughter for special occasions. She, we couldn't take her. So, but it just kept nagging at me like year after year. I couldn't stop thinking about it. And, I was looking at the website and saw that there's volunteer opportunities to become a wiki. Mm-hmm. That's what we call the volunteers in honor of the olden days when people had to trim the wicks.
Yeah.
To keep the lights going. So we call the volunteers wikis. So I signed up as a wiki, and I was out there every once a month, second Saturday of the month, helping, doing whatever needed doing. And then I saw on Craigslist they were advertising for someone to help with marketing. And I thought, oh, why aren't you tapping into the volunteer base? I can help with that. And I suggested as much. Then I started attending board meetings to give my marketing reports. And one board meeting, they were talking about that it was going to be time to nominate for new board positions. And I said, hey, I'm already coming. I'm already doing this thing. Yeah. So I would love to be a board member. And they unanimously and happily approved my board membership. And I was a board member for a decade, a volunteer for a year longer. So 11 years of taking care of it from the back end and taking care of it like on site. Mm-hmm. And then I just realized at some point that I was actually meant to be on that island, to exist on the island. But the only way that you could do that is as an innkeeper for the bed and breakfast, as I knew as a board member. So about 3 rounds, I tried to find a captain. I tried to make it work, piece it together. I so desperate was my, need to be there, and just knowing. And over the course of 10 years, it was very disappointing for it not to work out. All of my friends and family would be like, after 10 years, they'd be like, I know that's your wish. I know that's your dream. I know that you hope for that. And I was like, no, you're not listening. I'm supposed to be there. I just know it. And it was starting to make me waver in my faith a little every time it wasn't working out. And I would think to myself, how could I be so wrong about something I'm so sure about? The math just would not math.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and we had to close the B&B down, and the keepers moved on because they couldn't make any money. And we didn't have a backup plan. Nobody was expecting COVID. And everyone else on the board, married, houses, established, can't leave except me. And I thought,
here it is.
How the maths. It turns a number into a variable, and then it makes it work. And I got the situation in so much better a way than anyone ever has. I didn't have to work. I wasn't out there on Coast Guard assignment. I wasn't out there on board assignment as the innkeeper. I just got to live there, and they said, well, don't give up your place, your job. We don't know, sweet summer children that we all were, this will be fixed in a month, everything will go back to normal. And, we were doing that, mentally during COVID.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't care if it's 3 weeks. This is fulfilling my destiny. So I'm going. And then they said, oh, well, okay, if you're okay with it. My company closed down. It was a tourism bureau situation. So travel took a really big hit,
Yeah.
And the place that I was living in, the in-law unit, the house sold. So I got a severance check. I got a relocation check. And I moved to the light station all in the same week.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
So the universe was like, hey, you're not going to be able to work. Here's some money. Here's what you've always known you were going to have, even better than you thought you were going to have it. And that's how I came to be the light station keeper at East Brother Light Station for 14 months of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Wow.
What a rare opportunity.
Amazing.
Yeah, things line up sometimes. And of course, in many ways, COVID shuffled everyone's life around.
Yeah.
But that is an awesome place to land.
Yeah, it wasn't just lucky, though. And it's so clearly what was supposed to happen all along, and restored my absolute faith in the plan, just there's a plan, even though it's taking so long, it's because it's going to come to you better than you even wanted.
Tell us about moving to East Brother Light. You said you did all that, you got your check, you made the relocation all in a week.
Yes.
And that was
all in the same week.
Early COVID times.
I hadn't left my apartment after the quarantine at all. I was definitely one of those super scared, super freaked out. I don't want to even breathe the air outside people. And so it was scary for me, but I was like, no. I'm protected. This is going to be okay. I moved all my stuff into storage. I took maybe 4 storage totes of things to the island, because it's not easy taking anything on or off. It's a small boat, and then you've got a hoist. You've got a big, tall gangway that goes up to the to the island. So, the fewer items, the better. And again, I didn't know how long it was going to be. I didn't want to take too much. I only took my summer clothes out there because I thought, okay, it'll be over soon and just enjoy it, soak it up. And every, couple months that kept adding. And I was like, oh my God, maybe I'm going to spend fall here. Maybe I'm going to spend winter. Am I going to get to spend Christmas? Like every time it was just continued like gift.
Yeah.
As far as being quarantined, an island's about the best,
Yeah, it's
best
not
place.
so bad.
That's a kind of a specific dream come true.
Very specific. And I missed all of the stuff.
Yeah.
The 6 feet apart, the everyone wearing like I didn't have to deal with any of that. I was probably the safest person in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are okay things to have missed, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Did they bring you like supplies and things while you were out there? So during that 14-month period?
No. I was responsible.
Okay.
For myself. But since the light station typically runs as a bed and breakfast, there is 2 big, massive pantries. Sorry about that. 2 big, massive pantries, 3 commercial freezers, 2 commercial refrigerator, plenty. And I brought like all my stuff. Having been super quarantining myself, I was really stocked up. I'm a very good cook. So I filled everything up and it lasted a long time. I had produce and meat being delivered to the harbor.
Mm-hmm.
So all I would have to do is drive the boat into the harbor, pick up my box, and then go back. I never really had to go into the mainland. And I never really wanted to because any minutes that I lost were minutes that I would never get back.
Yeah. When we covered the episode, we talked about how there was an innkeeper position available and there was a lot of requirements for being an innkeeper. Like you had to be able to drive the boat to pick up the people and cook amazing meals and everything. So did you ever think that maybe after it had all blown over that you would be able to pick up the innkeeper position and be able to do all those things? Or like, were you prepared for being able to do all that?
The keeper for running the bed and breakfast position is very demanding and does have a lot of, and as I'd mentioned, I'd been trying to get that position in that 10 years, but not having the partner of having with the captain's license, all of that sort of thing, it couldn't work. So, and I really just had convinced myself, like, I can piece this together. I can find a captain. No, actually living out there, you can't just get to know someone that you're running a business. You really have to have an established relationship.
Yeah.
With a person. So no, it wasn't going to work for me to be the innkeeper, but I didn't have to be. Mm-hmm. I got it in so much better of a way. And I did have in the beginning there, Captain Jared Ward, who never gets enough credit, in my opinion, for all of his efforts. Captain Jared was out there as a co-light station keeper. He was in the main building and he was teaching me how to drive the boat, how to fix equipment, how to run the generators, how to, he taught me all of that while we were out there. When he was out there, he was still working. Yeah. He was being chartered for boats and captaining. So we wouldn't see each other too much, but when he had downtime, he was teaching me. If we had a big storm and, sections of the fence fell apart, we had to patch that up and how to, refill the propane tanks and all of that. And we didn't know. And again, it's so interesting, the faded woven tapestry of it all, that the power was going to go out.
Yeah.
And, the boat is up on a hoist. And the hoist only works when there's electricity. Mm-hmm. So Captain Jared couldn't get off the island and go to work. And he said, you know what, you got about a half of a day with me to learn whatever else you need to learn, but I've got to get off. I have work. So he strapped his dog to his chest got a backpack and launched a kayak in the water and paddled his way back to the mainland.
Wow.
And that was that. I was there alone after that. And thank God he had taught me everything that he taught me, because I needed that to survive the no power days, which were 2 months in totality.
So that, yeah. Well, how did that happen? Like, how did the power go out, and like, how did you navigate that whole thing?
So it was the evening of March 31st and of 2021. Mm-hmm. And my lights started flickering in my quarters. And I stepped out, and Captain Jared was out on the balcony of the historic building, and everything was flickering. And so we were looking at the mainland, at shore, to see if something was flickering on shore. You know, maybe it's just a general problem. Nothing was flickering except for with us. And then everything went black. And it was pretty late. We were both going to go to sleep anyway. He said, we'll check it out in the morning. Mm-hmm. I said, okay. So the morning is April Fool's Day, April 1st. And nothing, no power for sure. And so we called the president of the board and let him know what was going on. And again, Jared said, you know, you got a couple hours with me, but he was starting to get cagey.
Yeah.
Like, I got to get off. I'm trapped, you know. And it was his poor dog Lena. Her face when they were kayaking, she looked so worried. She was real low down onto the kayak. It was so cute. And he said, you know, you might need to think of. He's like, he would always say, you know, God, Desiree, like, you never leave this place. I know it's cool, but you never effing leave. And I said, I don't want to leave. I don't ever want to leave. Yeah. So then he said, well, now I know you don't want to leave, but you might really have to consider leaving. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the problem is or how long it's going to be, but this is something you might need to think about. Disregarded that, because there was no way I was going to leave my girl in her darkest hour. I wouldn't deserve the magic that she was giving me if I would just abandon her like that. So it was a rough 2 months. I would only get to shower like once a week. I couldn't have like fresh food, you know, dairy, anything like that. Yeah. I was piecing together meals at the end. It would be like crackers and broccoli, you know, from my garden. It was fine. It was fine. I was happy to do it. I would do it 1,000,000 times over.
You're a real wiki.
Yeah.
It's an adventure. So when the power first went out, I assume you had a cell phone was your main communications with the land, the inland?
This was very complicated. Yeah, I had a cell phone. We have a generator from the 1930s, bigger than me. And because he's such an old guy, you can't run him regularly or he gets tired. I named him Gentry. So I could run him for about an hour a day. I would plug in all my laptops and my phones and get full charges, but I would use one of the laptops specifically just as a battery pack because sometimes Gentry did break. Mm-hmm. And if I couldn't charge, I couldn't call out in a true emergency. So I would never use up all my power just in case, because Gentry broke about 5 times. And the first time he broke, I didn't know what, you know, a piston from a pepperoni. And I called the board. They said, we've got our guy, Steve Phillips of Pengrove Power and Implement Museum. He works on old antique machinery. He will be able to tell you what's going on. At this point, I had like 26% power left on my phone. So I called him, and he's on an age, but very smart, like one of the smart as a whip. So I talked him through how to download Duo so that we could essentially FaceTime, mm-hmm. so that he could then see and talk me through how to take apart what he knew was going on.
Yeah.
And it was like old technology meets new technology for the save, right? And so he sent a part down with a board member who drove it to the harbor. And then the harbor master, who was having engine trouble of his own, rode it out to me and then called Steve again so that he could show me how to install it and fix the generator.
Oh my gosh.
That is incredible.
Full team effort.
Absolutely. All hands on deck. And I got so good with that generator. I could smell if something was off. I could hear if something was off. And it was my only source of power. So I was really protective of it. And I needed that power because then, of course, the whole world found out about the no power situation.
Mm-hmm.
And news articles, people were calling, the GoFundMe account was up. And I felt like it was such a critical time to somehow to touch every person who called, because maybe that person knew someone else and the money was coming in, and I was using the power up every day, just trying to just reach people's hearts about saving it, because at that point we understood it was a failed submarine cable.
Okay.
And even though it was the responsibility of the Coast Guard, they didn't really want the $1 million price tag.
Right.
The cable itself was $150,000. Laying it was like another $800,000.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, our real obligation is to keep the light flashing. So we'll stick a solar panel up there and be done.
Yeah.
And I said, but that leaves us with no power to run the B&B. It was kind of well, then that's your problem, isn't it? I mean, you guys can come up with the money. So
Dang.
Yeah. And I was actually watching the light too. It was like living back in time. I can't tell you. It was like a time machine. So it is an active aid to navigation. The light has to flash. Mm-hmm. When I would run the generator, it would power the backup batteries, which had about 72 hours on them. But when the generator would break, I couldn't recharge those batteries. And so the Coast Guard said I had to keep an eye. And if the light wasn't flashing, then they would have to issue a state of emergency to get a backup generator funded by the Coast Guard out there. I thought you didn't have any money though, right? So I was literally keeping the light during that time as well. So it was such a unique time traveling experience.
Yeah, so cool and so horribly stressful.
There was a lot of steps to having no power, but I wasn't stressful. I was excited to rise up to whatever challenge the day brought. And it would be habitual things, but then the occasional, oh crap,
yeah,
gentry broke, or, the day tank is leaking and half of my diesel fuel is all over the floor.
Oh, no.
Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So it sounds like you were busy, to say the least.
Yeah.
But what was the day-to-day like before and then during the power failure? Was there a significant change? It sounds like all these activities you were doing.
Absolutely. So before, if it was just a regular, non-rainy, non-windy day, I could just do whatever came. If it was particularly windy, I would do inside things. If it was particularly nice, I would do outside things. I kind of started to befriend a raven, who I named Edgar Allan. So great focus was spent every morning on trying to get him closer.
Yeah.
I'd spend a good hour trying to get Edgar closer, and I could get him about 3 feet away from me.
Mm-hmm.
And then Edgar took a wife, Brandy Alexander. She would never get near me. But I would feed them every day, and then I would have to keep the seagulls away from the raven's peanuts because he was priority. But I would throw them some stuff too. There was a week-long wonderful period of life where, everything was hatching, and there were so many nests because there weren't guests walking around all the time. There were nests everywhere. I mean, hanging safety goggles had little nests built into the eye socket everywhere. And there was a duck that had a nest right outside of my entrance that I was watching. Anyway, one of her ducklings got stuck in the brush and she couldn't get it out. So she left the duckling. And then I was like, I'm her mother now.
I can do this for her.
So raising a little duckling, feeding Edgar and Brandy, looking for rainbows if it was a rainy day, tending to my garden, Duolingo, all the things that you say if you had infinite time. Oh, I'll grow a garden. Oh, I'll learn a language. Oh, like I was doing all of that stuff. When the power went out, the tasks went up quite a bit. Yeah. I was having to, when the generator would be on, I'd have the ice machine on. So I had to get buckets of ice to keep the one freezer. I had some blocks of stock acting as like blocks of ice, and the one freezer for some kind of protein. So I would have to swap out the ice twice a day. I had to gather kindling every evening because it was cold. Like you can see your breath cold still at the light station. So every morning I needed to start a fire. And a funny anecdote, because I'd been feeding Edgar and Brandy for months and months. And they say ravens and crows will bring you presents, right?
Yeah.
And nothing. And not that I was, I was still going to feed them, whatever. But I was like, okay, maybe these ones just, don't. But when the power was out and they had seen me gathering kindling and every night, they started leaving me bundles of twigs.
That's awesome.
From trees that weren't at the light station.
Yeah.
So they were bringing them over for me because that's what they saw me like needing. And how do you not melt?
Yeah. Ravens are supposed to be incredibly intelligent. I wonder if they were helping you out. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
They absolutely were helping me out. Indisputably.
That's incredible. So was power restored via a new submarine cable or solar system, or what happened there?
So we raised a fair amount of money in a short amount of time. We were able to pay a company to splice the cable, which is not a long-term or permanent fix, but you can get some years out of a splice. And the regulations were kind of starting to lift, and it was time to start talking about reopening the B&B with a little bit more regulation. Like the people would have to prove that they were vaccinated, and everything was getting double extra clean, and the splice would hold long enough that we could reopen the B&B, try to recoup some of our financial losses, and try to put aside some more money towards the permanent fix of the submarine cable. Right. So yeah, it's living on spliced power.
That's incredible. Wow. So I haven't had any recent touches with East Brother Light. So it sounds like the Airbnb is back up to speed, normally receiving guests.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, it reopened September of 2021.
Okay.
So was that effectively ended, like your care of the lighthouse, or were you able to stay there a little longer?
I stayed until August of 2021, late August. And we had contacted some former keepers. I cannot emphasize this enough. And people really don't understand how hard these keepers work. It is more than 24/7. They don't have days off. It's difficult. It is hard work. And keepers turn over approximately every 2 years, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little bit more. I've been through so many keeper interview processes, and we weren't getting, I don't want to say good enough, but I'm going to say good enough. We weren't getting good enough applicants, and we reached out to some former keepers who, since leaving the light station, were living on their sailboat, having adventures around the world.
Yeah.
And they had been there for 3 years when they were keepers, and they were willing to come back. And that's really the only way you could really restart it up and add the components of all the COVID precautions to someone who has already done it. That was the only way it was going to work.
Yeah.
So Brian and Stephanie came back for about 2 years, and now there's Dre and Charity that are out there, and they've been out there for about a year. And the next set of keepers will, and on it goes, like it has since 1980.
That's so cool. So much responsibility and
Yeah.
customer service, all down to two people. You have to have elite interviews. Yeah. What is that process like? What do you see between the candidates? Is that something you can discuss?
Sure. We'll get applications. We'll weed down the ones that we think have a strong chance. We interview them. Sometimes we do second rounds of interviews. We give them scenarios. We ask them questions. We give them the reality of the situation. You know, do you think you can handle, not having a life outside of this for,
Yeah.
2 years? Most people's family milestones happen on weekends: birthdays, celebrations, graduations, babies being born, weddings. You're not going to any of that. Are you going to be okay with that? How would you handle a guest who X, Y, and Z? Because we've had that. Um, and we have had situations where we'll choose a set of keepers, and then when the magnitude of it really hits them, they back out.
Oh no.
We've had to go with like our third and fourth option sometimes, because that's how it works out. We've had people that before the 2 years is up, they're like, you know what, I can't. We've got to go. We don't make anybody stay, and we just start the process again. 1 year, the hunt went viral. So where we would get maybe 6 real applicants, this time we had thousands of applicants, and we had to, weed through each one of them.
Yeah.
55 were viable candidates.
Whoa.
It felt like we were interviewing all the time that round. I mean, we were 3-4 times a week having to convene as a board, interviewing all of these applicants, taking it seriously. So viral has its pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
My gosh, that sounds like a lot of dedication.
So are you still on the board, or are you still helping with that process, or are you kind of moved on from East Brother?
In my heart, I will never move on from East Brother. That is the great love of my life. And I am not by my decision or my desire at all. I am no longer a board member. I don't want to get into that part of it.
Sure.
Because, people can ruin good things, other people and egos. But I just really, I don't want to take away from how wonderful and how magical. And I don't want anyone to be like, oh, well, that's not right. I won't go there. Go there.
Yeah.
Don't shoot yourself don't miss out. Go there. Everyone should go there. It is going to be one of the top 3 best experiences of your life. I don't hold bad feelings. I still love the light station. I still want people there.
Yeah. Well, there's some other things I saw. It sounds like your life is full of adventure. The Hotel Mac, the SS Red Oak are just some that popped up in my quick search of you. And I'm sure it's an incomplete list. Also, volunteer Burning Man, Richmond Museum Association. But I'm sure the incomplete list of previously interviewed by United States Lighthouse Society, Richmond Standard, Richmond Pulse, East Brother Beer Company, which I enjoyed, and World of Nuance, that recent YouTube video that was huge. Do you have any ideas about, or maybe you already have, recording some of your adventures, whether it be audio recordings or writing a book or
Video
something
blog
like that?
or something?
I do have plans for a book. I thought it was just going to be about the light station, and then things just kept happening for me. The light station just filled me up with this magical light, and ever since then, it's like a magnet for these amazing adventures, and I'm still in it. So there's not really time to write it, because it's still writing itself essentially.
Right.
And it's kind of nice to have some time, because your perspective on things changes with time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to have a well-rounded perspective before I put pen to paper will be helpful. And I already have the title for the Light Station book. I'll be our brother's keeper.
Nice.
Hey.
And the Isle is ISLE.
Love it.
Right?
You're ahead of it.
Yeah.
Reading about all this and watching your interviews and everything, after August of 2021, where did life take you after that?
So I think it was around July that I got a phone call from the Richmond Museum Association. I had been a board member there for 2 terms, so they knew me, and everyone knew me when the power went out. And I think I really proved my mettle to people who would look at me and say, "There's no way this girl's gonna, do these things or deal with this stuff." I think I really proved myself, tough and pioneering. And so the shipkeeper position, there's 2 shipkeepers that can trade off, came up, and they said, "Hey, would you be interested?" And I thought, again, with the plan, look at how it all just lines up. And I said, "Sure." And I said, "When does it start?" And they said, "Late August," which is when I was moving off the light station.
Yeah, perfect.
So I walked down the gangway of the light station and I walked up the gangway to the ship on the same day to take my stuff. And I was so nervous about, you get used to things. I got used to the sound of the water, the sound of the seagulls, not worrying about a calendar or a clock.
Mm-hmm.
I was so nervous about what my next step was going to be, and fully immersing back into the mainland and, all the people. And so it was nice to still kind of be on the outskirts, to still hear the seagulls, to still hear the water, to be on a ship that I had been visiting for years of my life. I didn't even need to be shown around. I knew my way around already. And it was so cool. It was so cool. And then 2 months after that, I got a phone call about being the innkeeper at the Hotel Mac, from a childhood friend who was the current innkeeper and moving on. And I said, "Well, sure, I can do both." And then 2 months after that, the Richmond Museum Association said, "Hey, the executive director of the museum is leaving. We're thinking you." And I thought, I don't know if I can juggle all of that, but I'll try. And that was a hard year. 2022 was a year of very little sleep, no time off whatsoever. But I did it. I did all 3. And I just continue to make myself proud.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you've got a great pulse on Richmond. You're very well connected. You know more than most, and you're right in there. Something I like to bring up when we talk about lighthouses. So I don't know the San Francisco Bay Area too well, but East Brother Light is most near Richmond. Is that right?
That's correct. And it's in a really rough channel, which is why there needs to be a lighthouse in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I learned how to drive a boat.
Oh my gosh.
Right into it.
There was a lot of yelling and crying.
It's like trying to drive a manual in rush hour traffic is your first time.
It's even harder. Well, driving the boat on the open water is fine. It's trying to land, the fine details of landing, because you're wanting to get in there, small detailing nuances, and the water's just like pushing you wherever it wants to push you.
Yeah.
Man.
You've had a lot of adventures. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about today, or questions for us?
So if I could share some historic anecdotes that I think are particularly interesting and or parallel to experiences. You guys obviously are familiar with the Stenmark era.
Mm-hmm.
So the exit that you take to get to the light station was renamed Stenmark Drive in honor of the Stenmarks. Tom Butt, who is president of the East Brother Light Station nonprofit, he was also the mayor of Richmond for 8 years. He had it changed to honor the Stenmarks. And we've had Stenmark descendants come out to the light station to be on the grounds of their their ancestors, which has been particularly special. So the Stenmarks went there with 2 children, and they had 2 children while they were out there. Captain Stenmark having to row to San Quentin to fetch a doctor both times.
Yeah.
And there's no real mention, because at that time, of course, you don't complain, right?
Right.
But who knows what the conditions of the water were, what the weather was, whether it was nighttime, or I think about these things all the time. Just here I am getting my, kindling, thinking, oh, I'm True Grit. But, Captain Stenmark was True Grit, and they were out there for 22 years, which is amazing. Initially, there was a teacher that was sent by the county to come teach the children. So she would stay in the little schoolhouse quarters, which are now the innkeeper's quarters, which is where I was living. And then when the train came, then they changed it so that the Stenmarks would have to row the kids to shore, and the kids would ride the train into town to go to school. But you don't think about things like that. When one of their daughters was older, a gentleman who worked for Standard Oil, which is now Chevron, would row out to court her. And at the beginning, he wasn't very good, but he became very fluent in rowing, to come and court her. And of course, they were married. And so the Stenmark days are fascinating to me. And I had, there's different types of dreams. Sometimes there's dreams that are not dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of those when I lived out there. I mean, I was just constantly getting messages and prophetic dreams. One of them in particular, Lady Stenmark, and an accompanist were coming up from the north shore of the island, which is not where the dock is now, but it is where it was during that time.
Wow.
So Lady Stenmark came up. She was all in Victorian garb, and she's pointing at all of the things that were different. And then she sees me, and she points at me. And then she points down, and I look down, and suddenly I'm standing in the garden, and there's this Swiss chard growing all around me. So it was clear that Lady Stenmark wanted me growing chard in my garden, and I put 6 plants out there. So, and they did really well.
That's amazing.
So that's my Stenmark. That's my little Stenmark story. And then after the Stenmarks were the Kofods. And they had 2 grandchildren and their daughter who lived in Berkeley, little Walter and Emma Fanning. Their dad was away at World War I, and the Spanish influenza was ravishing the world, much like we were dealing with during COVID. So Walter and Emma's grandparents, the Kofods, said, you guys are moving out here to the light station to escape the flu. Mm-hmm. And so I was living at the light station, escaping the flu. And Walter, as a very old man in the 70s, when the Coast Guard wanted to demolish the structures, and the nonprofit formed and the historic designation was given, Walter was there as president of the board. He was on that light station day in and day out, working towards the restoration with his own hands. He built himself a little room that he would sleep in because, he was there all the time. And we've subsequently turned that room into Walter's quarters as a place where the guests can stay, where good old Walt used to stay. I never met him myself, but I think that anyone who, I get all emotional, anyone who loved the light station like that, like me, I have so much respect for. So my little duckling, who I found, I named her Dakota Fanning after Walter.
That's so funny.
After Walter Fanning. And I moved every historic artifact that had to do with Walter and and the Kofods into Walter's quarters area. So not only do you get to stay in his quarters, you get to see all of the things that are from his lineage, from his history there at the light station. So that's my Walter Fanning story. And then I mentioned that the day tank was leaking diesel fuel one time because I came in to turn the generator off and everything was wet. Oh. I lived completely feral out there. I never wore shoes and nothing fancy. So I walk into this wetness and I like freak out. You know, apparently diesel is a little different than gas. It's not as flammable. I didn't know that though at the time. Yeah. And I was thinking, oh my God.
Flashback.
You know, I threw my cell phone out of the building, you know, in case it rang or something, a spark. And I'm picturing a fire, much like the fire that happened in the boathouse. Poor Willard, who burned his hands all up trying to fan that fire out. The whole gangway burned up. I don't even know how they got out there to them. It was just, but I poured flour and baking soda and any powders that I had to like soak it up. And it was just the scariest day. And I thought, oh God, and now I understand like the panic that he must have gone through, the responsibility that was on his shoulders like that. And it was like walking in the feet of history out there. There were a lot of parallels, and I'm infinitely grateful. I could never explain how grateful I am to have had to be gathering that kindling, to had to be smelling for a week before I could shower, to had to be not eating correctly for those 2 months. I'm so grateful for all of that.
Yeah, and especially like at that time, no one else was willing to do it, and the Lighthouse needed somebody like you, and that's why the time had gone on so long without being able to fulfill your dream, is that you're being saved for a specific moment where nobody else would be able to fill that hole. So it's amazing.
Yeah. And I thought about that too. I thought, this is why it has to be me. Who else was going to do that? Who else? Destiny, man. Yeah. It's a really neat thing.
There's all kinds of crazy spiritual, unexplainable stories, like your prophetic dreams and those kind of like the destiny sort of things. A lot of those things happen around lighthouses. It just seems like it's kind of like a path to another world that people experience all kinds of crazy stuff.
It changes a person though too, or it did me. I got to sit down and watch the most beautiful sunsets every night. You know, I wasn't interested in TV. The birds would all come in from wherever, all the directions, and circle West Brother and land. And the sunsets behind it were just... And now I look at sunsets as such beautiful, overwhelming things. On my birthday, it was raining, and usually that would suck, right, out here. But it meant that I had rainbows all day, all throughout the sky. On my birthday, a gift from my light station. And it changed me.
Yeah.
My friend Gary at the harbor, he always says, oh, Des, you saved her. She saved me.
That's incredible. A lot of people say, they win the lottery. One of their plans is to find an island and throw away their cell phone. I think it's a different context, but we're all looking for something like that, some real experience, especially with a lighthouse and all that history to connect with. I think, the sitting in the sand with a drink in hand is a different idea, but it's kind of the same hope that people have, some adventures, some history, some stories, and something real to connect with.
Absolutely. And not all of us are so fortunate, and gratitude is an amazing healer.
Yeah. So your experience with, I don't want to speak for you, but it's meant to be a question. Your experience with East Brother Light and your, I'll say, spiritual connection to it, those dreams that you had, these feelings that you have, how has that gone into your other work that you've done? Because from meeting you online and also watching other recordings and videos of you, it seems like you carry that passion around. Is that just all over the place? You see through a different scope now?
completely different scope. I I still believed in a lot of universe and juju and all of that before going out there, but it's so much more intense now. Like I never question the signs and the signals now. They are out there. The day before the keepers were coming back on to like get things restarted, my last official day alone at the lighthouse, I walked out to the garden in the morning to feed the birds, and I saw this. It was on one of my squash leaves, and I saw this thing happening with some cocoon. uh and I thought, let me go run and get my phone, but then I thought, no, 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 this is just for me.
Yeah.
So I sat there for about an hour, and I watched this thing that, I mean, this is going to sound gross, but this is what it was. This thing came out of it that was the color of pus, like not quite yellow, not quite green, kind of creamish. And it like opened up its wings and dried out and slowly started turning red and getting its spots. I watched a ladybug be born.
Oh my gosh.
Cool.
and fly away. And it was such a reassuring message to me, because of course I knew that time was going to come. This isn't forever. I'm going to have to leave. Of course, I'm going to be sad about it. Of course. Right. But it was like a message from the island. Like, you are also being born.
Well, ladybugs are symbols of hope as well. Isn't that right? Or is it luck maybe?
I don't know.
I'm losing it. I think there's some.
Either way.
Yeah.
Either way. What a wonderful, reassuring, you're okay, you're safe. We still got you.
We always talk about, or at least I do, I bring it up every community that we talk with someone about their lighthouse, their local lighthouse. Of course, we're a little bit biased because we're already in the lighthouse circle, right? So that's how we start the conversation. But it seems to be culturally significant. And I think that is not so much in the physical presence of lighthouses, but people's experiences. They have memories, they travel with family, they go out there. Sometimes they see ghosts. There's all sorts of stories, even to modern day, with people living around lighthouses. And I think we've talked with folks, and this always comes up. Maybe I always bring it up, but it just seems so significant to me. It's really been a pleasure to hear some of your experiences out there.
Yeah.
Today, because everyone loves history. We love to read and hear about things that have happened, but when you're talking about living history, about modern day events and feelings that may or may not be captured, by a cell phone, like you said, or in a book or on an interview, there's so much of life that is not recorded, but it's really special. It's something to appreciate it. It's really cool.
Absolutely. And I I have a respect for lighthouses. They keep ships from sinking, and it's a I respect lighthouses. I do. But people always say, "Oh, here, look at this lighthouse," or "Let me get you this lighthouse statue." Oh, you love lighthouses, don't you? I love a lighthouse.
Yeah.
And by proxy, all of her cousins.
Yeah.
But I love a lighthouse.
Yeah.
She's mine. We have something that no one else has had and that no one else could ever take from me.
Yeah.
Incredible. Desiree, you have anything else you want to talk about today?
No, thank you guys for keeping the light on and spreading the word about our beautiful lighthouses that are just few and far between, more and more these days.
Yeah, and we're so grateful that you could talk to us and share all of your genuine experiences with the Lighthouse, because, in our episodes, we cover the history and things that we find online, but the real feelings, the genuine human experiences there can't really be captured in just short summaries of things that happen in history. So we love to be able to expand, especially on specific lighthouses, on those really, really real things.
It's really real, and it's really hard. I know that I'm over here like rainbows and magic, but it was hard living. It was really hard living. And so I respect our forefathers in a way that I didn't before.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know how to end it any better than that. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
We'll
Yeah.
keep in touch, let you know when this airs, and see what we can help you with or talk to you about in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Great. Thanks so much. And I'll send you tons of stuff and you can pick what you want.
Okay. that
Thank you
sounds
so
great.
much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. Well, that was a fun interview.
What are we, like 80 years old?
Yeah.
I'll just say
You wouldn't even let me do it. You just do it.
check us out on our website, thelighthouselowdown.com. You can send us an email, thelighthouselowdown@gmail.com. And you can check out our Instagram. We have a YouTube. You can listen to our podcast anywhere. All of that you can find on our website. Thank you, Vince, for planning this interview and executing it. Oh, so Vince is mad at me. You say bye.
See you next time on the Lighthouse Lowdown.
Bottom all the way. No. Why are we like giddy?